welcome to another episode of Belongs to the Shadows. I'm your host, Jaime Bennett. Creepy host, Jaime Bennett. As always, I do recommend viewer discretion is advised. I'm going to be discussing the history of witches on this episode. I'm also going to be telling you all the difference between Wiccan and witchcraft, among other things. Also, if you stay tuned after the credits, there's a little bonus material for you all, and I hope that you enjoy it. Yeah. So, let's get started, shall we? I wanted to do this episode because I just feel that it's important to cover all religions, and Wiccan is a religion. So I wanted to cover that topic. I know that it's not a scary topic, it's not a creepy topic, but it does kind of go along with this show. It is a topic that I felt that I wanted to talk about for Belongs to the Shadows. Another reason is because my great aunt Mabel was a witch, and she dealt with herbs, and she would make recipes from herbs to heal rashes, to, heal ailments. She had grimoires with these recipes in it, and so she was considered a witch. A lot of people thought that she was a witch, but they also thought that, she was a healer. And essentially, a lot of witches were healers, and they were accused of being evil and accused of working alongside the devil. And I'm here today to kind of set the story straight. What you see on television and what you read in books is not always true. So I want to educate and give information and kind of set the story straight. I hope that I'm able to do that through this episode. And this is such a huge topic that this episode's not going to cover it all. It's just going to cover a very small amount of witchcraft and witches and the history of witches. So there will be other parts to this episode in the future. So stay tuned for that. And like I said, stay tuned after the credits for a bonus feature. Enjoy this episode. So, I'm going to be talking about the history of witches, and I'm also going to be talking about the Salem Witch Trials, as well as the difference between Wicca and witchcraft. I believe that it's extremely important to include that in this episode, because a lot of people think that they are the same thing, and they are not, and I'm going to explain the differences between Wicca and witchcraft. So, we're going to begin with the difference between Wicca and witchcraft, like I said, because it's very important that, I include that in this episode, because a lot of people do believe them to be the same thing. I'm going to be reading this from the difference between .net miscellaneous / religion - miscellaneous / difference - between - Wicca and - witchcraft. So if you want to read more about it, you can find it on that website. So Wicca versus witchcraft. And like I said, a lot of people find it very, very hard to differentiate between the two. Most people do believe that they are the same thing, which they are really not. So in reality, they are completely different. To make an overview of the two, I could simply categorize them such that you all will have a better understanding and perspective about the distinction between the two. Wicca is a religion, like Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism, or Islam, while witchcraft is the practice. That's something you do, like praying or meditating or praising. Wicca is a new religion. It is the spiritual belief that was introduced to the public by a person that goes by the name of Gerald Gardner. The supporters of the religion are therefore called Wiccans, or sometimes they are referred to as witches or crafters. That is also the reason why Wicca and witchcraft have been mistaken to be the same thing. In the early days, they would often relate witchcraft to black magic and curses. People back then believed that witchcraft practices were used to inflict harm to the people of the community or even to their property. They had believed that witches were working alongside the devil. But as time has passed, the beliefs were changed. Witchcraft is now viewed as a practice that is involved in healing the sick or helping with fertility and things along those lines. Wiccans have guardians that they call watchtowers. They have what they call calling the quarters. And that is where the guardians are called. These watchtowers will be put in each of the 4 compass directions: north, east, west, and south. In witchcraft, they do not call them watchtowers, but guardians. They have guardians. Often these guardians are not human. They are spirits that have good relationships with the people. They could be one of their ancestors or any spirit whom they are familiar with. These guardians, whether they are from Wicca or witchcraft, are called to keep their sacred area very well protected from unwanted influence. Not all of the traditions have guardians because they are not necessary. The 2 systems are completely different in their purposes. As I had mentioned earlier, Wicca is their religion, which is the purpose to honor their God, as well as value every individual's spirituality. The purpose of witchcraft does not involve the Lord or any other deities. They focus mainly on the use of magic and spells to attain their desired results, such as healing, protection, love, and things along those lines. Because witchcraft is considered to be the practice, a witch can become a member of any religion that they can join. So Wicca and witchcraft are very, very different at keeping their secrets. Wiccans barely have any secrets to keep anymore because all of their kept secrets were written down in a book called the Book of Shadow. This book is a record of their rituals, and it served as their religion's diary. Witchcraft, however, they are very, very particular and very, very particular about their mysteries. Keeping secrets is very, very important to them, and there might be some information written in books, but there are also a lot of things that have not been and never will be written down. The oaths that are conducted to guard their secrets are taken very seriously, and anyone who will reveal these secrets could be punished. So, Wicca is a religion, and witchcraft is considered a practice. The next part that I'm going to be talking about comes from the History Channel. So you can find it on history.com/topic/folklore/history-of-witches. That's where I'm reading this from, and it's from an article that came out on September 12th, 2017, and it has been updated in October 20th of 2020. Witches have always been perceived as evil or portrayed as evil, but they were perceived as evil by early Christians in Europe. That's what inspired the iconic Halloween figure. Most witches have appeared in various forms throughout history, portrayed as evil or hags with warts on their nose, standing over a boiling cauldron of liquid, cackling beings riding through the sky on their brooms with pointy hats. In pop culture, they have been portrayed as benevolent, nose-twitching suburban housewives, awkward teenagers learning to control their powers, to a trio of witch sisters, the Charmed Sisters battling the forces of evil. But the real history of witches is much more dark, and often for the witches, very deadly. This comes from a quote on this page. It's the origin of witches, and early witches were people who practiced witchcraft using magic, spells, and calling upon spirits for help or to bring about change. Most witches were thought to be pagans doing the devil's work. Many, however, were simply natural healers or so-called wise women whose choice of profession was misunderstood. It is unclear exactly of when witches came upon the scene in history. But one of the earliest records of a witch is actually found in the Bible, in Book 1 Samuel, thought to be written between 931 BC and 721 BC. It tells the story of when King Saul sought the witch of Endor to summon the dead prophet Samuel's spirit to help him defeat the Philistine army. The witch roused Samuel, who then turned around and prophesied the death of Saul and Saul's sons. And the very next day, according to the Bible, Saul's sons died in battle, and Saul had committed suicide. There are also other verses that condemn witches in the Old Testament, such as the oft-cited Exodus 22:18, which says, and I quote, "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live." So there are additional biblical passages cautioning against divination, chanting, using witches to contact the dead, so necromancy. And that does come from the History Channel website, like I said. So if you want to read more about it, you can go to that website. And of course, a famous thing in our history, a very important time of our history that mentions witches, and it's a big thing in our history, is, of course, the Salem Witch Trials. As the witch hysteria had decreased in Europe, it grew in the New World, which was also reeling from the wars between the French and British, and also a smallpox epidemic, and the ongoing fear of attacks from the neighboring Native American tribes. The atmosphere was ripe and tense for finding scapegoats. Probably the best known witch trials, like I said, took place in Salem, Massachusetts in the year of 1692. It had begun, the Salem Witch Trials actually had begun with a 9-year-old girl named Elizabeth Parris and an 11-year-old girl named Abigail Williams, who were suffering from fits, body contortions, and uncontrolled screaming. Which nowadays they believed that that was actually a poisoning from a fungus which caused the spasms and the delusions. As more young women had begun to exhibit the symptoms, mass hysteria then ensued. And 3 women were actually accused of witchcraft: Sarah Good, Sarah Osborne, and I'm not sure how to pronounce this lady's name, but it's Tituba. It's spelled Tituba. I don't mean any disrespect, so I would say it's Tituba, maybe, an enslaved woman owned by Paris's father. Tituba confessed to being a witch and had began accusing others of using black magic. And then on June 10th, a lady by the name of Bridget Bishop had become the first accused witch to be put to death during the Salem Witch Trials. She was hanged at the Salem gallows. 150 people, around 150 people, that's a rather large number, were accused, and of those 150 people, 18 were put to their death. And it wasn't just women who were victims. Surprisingly, there were 6 men who had also been convicted and executed. Massachusetts was not the first of the 13 colonies to be obsessed with witches. In Windsor, Connecticut in 1647, Alcee Young was the first person in America executed for witchcraft. Before Connecticut's final witch trial had taken place in 1697. 46 people were accused of witchcraft, and of the 46 people that were accused of witchcraft in that state, 11 of them were put to death for the crime. That's insane. That is completely insane. I'd hate to think of, if they were holding the Salem witch trials or if they were holding witch trials of nowadays. Can you imagine how many people would be accused of being a witch just for health ailments or, having allergies from their environment? That's completely insane. And it all started with 2 little girls. That makes me extremely sad. In Virginia, people were less frantic about witches. In fact, the lower Norfolk County in 1655 had passed a law making it a crime to falsely accuse someone of witchcraft. But witchcraft was still a concern. About 24 witch trials, mostly women, took place in Virginia between the years of 1626 and 1730. None of the accused were executed. So, you may have asked yourself this question before, or you may be asking yourself this question now. Are witches real? One of the most famous witches in Virginia's history is a person by the name of Grace Sherwood. Her neighbors alleged that she killed their pigs and hexed their cotton. Other accusations followed, and Sherwood was brought to trial in 1706. The court had decided to use a controversial water test to determine the guilt or the innocence. Sherwood's arms and legs were then bound, and she was thrown into a body of water. It was thought that if she sank, she of course was innocent. And if she had floated, she had to be guilty. Shoreward didn't sink, so she then was convicted of being a witch. She wasn't killed, however, but put in prison for 8 years. An article that was supposedly written by Benjamin Franklin about the witch trial in New Jersey. It was published in 1730 in the Pennsylvania Gazette, and it brought to light the ridiculousness of some witchcraft accusations. It wasn't long before witch mania had died down in the New World, and laws were passed to protect the people from being wrongly accused and convicted. The Book of Shadows. Modern day witches of the Western world, they do still struggle to shake the historical stereotype of being evil, of working with the devil, anything that's considered dark and negative. Most practice Wicca, which is an official religion in the United States and Canada. Wiccans do avoid evil and the appearance of evil at all costs because of the stereotype that has been put and placed upon them. So their motto is actually harm none. And they do strive to live a peaceful, tolerant, and well-balanced life that is in tune with nature and humanity. Many modern-day witches still do perform witchcraft, but there is seldom anything sinister about it. Like I said, nothing evil about it. They try to avoid that at all costs. Their spells and incantations are often derived from the Book of Shadows, which was a 20th century collection, or which is a 20th century collection of wisdom and witchcraft, and it can be compared to the act of prayer in other religions. Modern day witchcraft potion, any potion that's made in modern day witchcraft is more than likely going to be an herbal remedy for like a rash or the flu, instead of a hex to harm someone. Today's witchcraft spells are usually used to stop someone from doing harm or evil or harming themselves. And ironically, while it's probable that some historical witches used witchcraft for evil purposes, many have embraced it for healing and protection against the immorality that they were actually accused of. Witches, whether they are actual or accused, still faced persecution and death. Several men and women that were suspected of using witchcraft have been beaten and killed in Papua New Guinea since 2010. That's recent. That's really, really scary when you think about that, and it's very, very upsetting when you think about that. And it includes a young mother who was burned alive. Similar episodes of violence against people accused of being witches have occurred in Africa, South America, the Middle East, and in immigrant communities in Europe and the United States. If it sounds like I'm about ready to cry, it's really upsetting. Very, very upsetting to read something like that happening. So at the beginning of this, I told you about my Aunt Mabel, and I do want to take this time in this episode to tell you how important my Aunt Mabel was and is to me. I didn't get to know her for very, very long in my life. I was a kid when I hung out with her, but she believed in herbal remedies. She believed in making, I guess you would call them potions, but she would make recipes for like herbal remedies, and she would keep, her recipe books for herbal remedies in her shed. And when she had passed away, mysteriously her shed had burned down, and with it, all of her recipe books for herbal cures and herbal remedies. That's really, really sad. Um, it's in my belief system that, I'm what I guess you would call a Christian witch. I believe in God, but I also believe in Mother Nature. I believe in being in tune with the earth. I have a lot of respect for the earth. I have respect for all living beings, whether it be a butterfly, to a human being, to a tree. I believe all living things need to be respected. And I do meditate by praying to God or talking to God, and telling him what I'm thankful for and what, I'm having difficulties with, like it could be, hey, I'm having a hard time sleeping. Um, can you help calm my nerves so that I can sleep better? I do meditate by talking to God, but I also meditate by being in nature. That's why I like going to the ocean, because I'm an empath, and bodies of water is very, very energizing and recharging for empaths. It helps us to recharge. So, yeah, I love nature. I love being in tune with nature, and I have a lot of respect for nature. And it's in my belief system that, we shouldn't judge people for their religion. I always have it in my mind that as long as they're not harming themselves and they're not harming anyone else, then what does it matter what they believe in? It's their belief system. They're not forcing it upon you, and they're not forcing you to believe the way that they believe. Me and my husband have two different religious belief systems, and I'm not going to judge him for the way he believes, because he doesn't judge me for the way I believe, and also because it's not hurting himself and it's not hurting anyone else around him. His belief system is actually a very peaceful belief system, but it's not my story or belief system to talk about. So the best thing for me to do is to not talk about it, but just say that I'm not going to judge anybody for the way that they believe, the way that they meditate, and the way that they pray. Or if they don't pray, it's up to them. We shouldn't judge people for their belief system, and that's the problem. With the Salem Witch Trials, people got panicked and they got scared because they didn't understand something. So, because they didn't understand it, they then for panicked, and mass hysteria ensued, and a lot of people were wrongfully accused, and a lot of people had lost their lives. Modern witches still face, judgment. They face harsh judgment. I have had judgment placed on me before. I've had people to tell me, why do you believe that way? That's evil. Why do you have, Wiccan books on your bookshelf? There is nothing negative in any of those books, and quite personally, it's my business. But I like herbology. I like learning about the different medicinal properties to plants. I think that, plants were put on this earth to help us, to cure things, to cure rashes, to cure ailments, Um, so I like learning that stuff, but it really doesn't matter because it's my belief system. I'm not hurting anyone, and I'm not preaching to anyone about it. Another important aspect of the history of witches that I feel the need to mention is the association of black cats with witches. And I think that that's important because, like witches, black cats have gotten a bad rep. And I'm going to be getting this from a website called solidgoldpet.com. /blog/news/ here's the actual reason witches have black cats. So if you want to read more about it or want to read the article that I'm getting this from, that's the website for it. So here's the actual reason why witches have black cats. And like I said, black cats don't exactly have a good reputation. They have been considered bad luck. A lot of times, black cats unfortunately get killed on Halloween. So in my mind, I think that cat's not bad luck, but the color of the cat is bad luck to the cat because of this reputation. That's really, really sad. Black cats have always had a bad rep. And they've been associated with things like bad luck, witchcraft, spooky parts of Halloween, but that's not where this began. Back in the 14th century, black cats were actually worshipped as gods. Good. I love all critters, so good. But as time went on, their reputation had quickly changed during the Middle Ages. The black cat had become affiliated with evil, and this stemmed from them being nocturnal animals. Witchcraft also played a big part of the cat's evil image. Since being one with nature was an important part of witchcraft, it had become common for them to have a cat as a companion. Cats are also nocturnal, they roam at night, which leads to the belief that they were supernatural servants to witches. When the black cat was linked to the devil, it led to many of them being killed during the Black Death pandemic. Although that the cats were actually helping to kill the rats that had spread the plague. The term witchcraft has a negative connotation, but that true definition and what it means is craft of the wise. When witches had claimed to be able to perform magic, they were actually brewing special potions to help heal the sick. That's when the Christian church had spread the propaganda that their magical powers came from the devil. Others believed that cats were actually humans that had committed bad deeds and had been forced to return to the world. And while it's hard to imagine that anyone had ever considered these beautiful animals to be evil, the beliefs ultimately led to the superstitions people have of black cats, even to this day. That's really, really sad. So yeah, black cats are affiliated with witches. They're affiliated with evil. And like I said, unfortunately, a lot of black cats get killed, especially during Halloween. I have heard people say that they wouldn't have a black cat because they're bad luck. Don't let a black cat run in front of you or cross your path because it's going to be bad luck, like the whole walking under a ladder superstition. Black cats are just like any other cat. They are beautiful, beautiful creatures. I've had a few black cats in my lifetime. I've had one named Salem. I know, an original name, Salem. Can you imagine that? And my name was supposed to be Sabrina, so that's even more ironic. I would have been a Sabrina with a cat named Salem. Little unknown fact about Jamie. Also, I've had a cat named Bright Eyes who was black. Midnight, another original name. I've had several black cats in my lifetime, and they have never, ever, ever brought me bad luck. However, they died. Um, Maybe they brought themselves bad luck, unfortunately, because one of them died because the neighbor decided that it would be a good idea to shoot the cat with an arrow while we were gone to my grandma's for the weekend. And the cat ended up jumping down into a hole that had water in it, and he couldn't get out, and he ended up drowning. So I lost my cat, Salem, because of that. And my cat, Midnight, had died due to kidney failure, which is a very common thing in cats. Unfortunately, I've had probably 3 cats that have died from kidney failure. It's just something that cats deal with more often than not. And my other black cat actually died from a snake bite. He had ran off and we couldn't find him, and then I ended up seeing him dead on the road when I was coming home from school, and my mom and dad went and got him, and they had said that he was bit by a snake. So yeah, black cats are not bad luck, and anybody who believes that, that's just sad for you, because I've had many black cats that have been perfectly loving, and they're beautiful creatures, and I see nothing wrong with black cats. I also have a raven, oddly enough, named Mordecai. Any of my friends who are watching this right now are probably giggling because I have talked about Mordecai before. I love that bird. He's a free range raven, and I happened to name him Mordecai because he kept hanging around outside our house. And I'm like, if you're going to keep hanging around like this and doing deeds for me, then I'm going to have to give you a name. So his name is Mordecai, and he has got a partner named Morgan. And they hang around our house quite often. Um, Mordecai is pretty awesome. He's a very, very smart bird, and I just absolutely love that bird. If anything happened to him, I would be heartbroken. But he got my dog's frisbee off the roof, and so I love that bird. So yeah, you know, not everything you hear in stories or books or everything you watch on TV is true. Before you place judgment on someone for their belief system, you should probably research it. You should probably look it up, and you should see what it's all about before you place judgment on them. That would be the best thing. And then if you've done your research and it's not a religion for you and you don't agree with it, don't be mean about it. Don't ridicule someone for believing what they believe. If someone's a Wicca, who cares? As long as they're not hurting you or anyone else, who cares? It's their belief system and their business. People will do different things and they have different beliefs to help them. That's what they believe in, or that's what they've researched and decided that was the religion for them, or that's the kind of religion that they grew up in. I grew up in a Christian home. So, yeah, I believe in God. But like I said, I also believe in Mother Nature, and I believe in being in tune with the earth. Um, so yeah, there's a little bit of a history of witches. I didn't cover everything because there is so much that I could cover about witches. So this is just a very small portion of what I could have covered and what can be covered in the future. So there may be a part 2 of this in the future. I hope that you enjoyed that episode of Belongs to the Shadows. Until next time, stay creepy, and please remember to like and subscribe. Hello and welcome to Star Raven Radio for the very first installment of the Ghost Files. On this episode of the Ghost Files, I'm going to be telling you the story of Baba Yaga, the Russian witch. Once upon a time, an old man lived in a hut with his little girl Natasha. So happy they were. At tea time, they would play peekaboo behind the samovar, a very tall teapot used in Russia. They would drink tea with honey, bread, and strawberry jam. Everything was fine. The only sad times were when the old man remembered how much he missed having a wife by his side and a mother for Natasha. One day the man met a woman he liked a lot, and before long they were married. At first Natasha was glad to have a stepmother to look after her, but not for long. The stepmother started all kinds of strict new rules. Natasha wasn't allowed to play games like peekaboo anymore with her father. She wasn't allowed to have other girls over for tea. Her stepmother said that little girls shouldn't have tea at all, much less eat bread and jam. All Natasha got for dinner was one small crust of bread, and she must leave the hut to eat it. Poor Natasha. She would run into the backyard to the shed to hide. She would wet the small crust with her tears and eat it all alone. Then the stepmother would yell that she must come back in the house right away. The dishes from dinner needed washing, and the floor must be swept clean till it shone. Yet something else was worse than all of this. Each night the stepmother sat with Natasha's father and told him that everything that went wrong in the house was his daughter's fault. Sadly, the old man believed his new wife. One day the stepmother decided she could not stand the sight of Natasha one more day. How could she get rid of the girl once and for all? The stepmother remembered her sister, the terrible witch, Baba Yaga, who lived in the forest. I know how to get rid of that brat for good, the stepmother said to herself with a smile. The very next morning the old man left to visit some friends in the next village. As soon as he was put out of sight, the wicked stepmother spun around to Natasha. "Listen to me," she hissed. "Today you will go to visit my sister, your dear little auntie, who lives in the forest. You will ask her for a needle and thread. We need it to mend this shirt." "But," said Natasha, holding up a needle and thread for her stepmother to see, "we already have a needle and thread." She knew about her aunt who lived in the forest. She was none other than the terrible witch Baba Yaga, the one who chased little children by riding through the air on her giant broom, and when she caught them, would eat them with her iron teeth. "Who asked you?" snapped the stepmother, knocking the needle and thread out of the little girl's hand. Shaking with fear, Natasha said, "Well, how do I find my auntie?" "That's better," said the stepmother with a crooked smile. She twisted the little girl's nose, pinching it hard. "That is your nose," she said. "Can you feel it?" "Yes," whispered the poor little girl. "You must go along the road into the forest till you come to a fallen tree. Then turn left," said the stepmother. "Follow your nose. It'll take you to your auntie. Now off with you, you lazy girl." The stepmother shoved a small sack in the girl's hand that had a few morsels of stale bread and cheese and some scraps of meat. and pushed Natasha out of the hut. Natasha looked back. Her stepmother stood in front of the door with her arms crossed, glaring. There was nothing she could do but to go on her way. The girl walked along the road to the forest, then to the fallen tree. Then she turned left. Her nose started to throb harder, so she knew she was going the right way. Then all of a sudden, in front of her, behind an old gate, stood the hut of Baba Yaga. There could be no mistake. Only the hut of Baba Yaga, the witch, stood high up on its giant chicken legs and could walk around the yard by itself. When it turned to face you, the front windows looked like two eyes and the door looked like a mouth. The two gate doors in the fence were open. When Natasha pushed them a bit to go through, they made a terrible squeaking sound. On the ground, she noticed a rusty oil can. The girl picked it up. "How lucky," she said. "There's some oil left." She poured the few drops left on the hinges of the gate. Both gates' doors swung open with a peep. As Natasha walked closer, Baba Yaga's house turned around on its chicken legs, and it faced her. Frightened as she was, the sound of crying made Natasha turn around. A servant of Baba Yaga's was standing in the yard, crying and wiping her tears on her sleeve. "How lucky," Natasha said, "that I have a handkerchief." She untied her handkerchief, shook it clean, and carefully put the scrap of food in her pockets. She gave the cloth to Baba Yaga's servant, who wiped her tears with it and smiled. In front of the door to the hut was a huge thin dog chewing on an old bone. "How lucky," said the little girl, "that I have some bread and meat." Reaching into her pocket for her scraps of bread and meat, Natasha said to the dog, "I'm afraid it's a rather stale, but it's better than nothing." At once the dog gobbled it up and licked his lips. Natasha finally reached the door to the hut. Trembling, she knocked. "Come in," squeaked the wicked voice of Baba Yaga. The little girl stepped in. There sat Baba Yaga the witch, weaving at a loom. She had scraggly white hair, a very long nose, and when she smiled, showed a mouth full of iron teeth. The witch was skinny and bony. "Good day to you, Auntie," said Natasha, trying to sound not afraid. "Good day to you, niece," said Baba Yaga. "My stepmother has sent me to you to ask for a needle and thread to mend a shirt." "Has she now?" smiled Baba Yaga, flashing her iron teeth. For she knew how much her sister hated Natasha, her stepdaughter. "You sit down here at my loom and continue to weave," said Baba Yaga. "I will go and fetch you that needle and thread." So the little girl sat down at the loom and began to weave. Baba Yaga whispered to her servant girl, "Listen to me. Go to the bathhouse, start up the fire for the bath water. It must be very hot." "Yes," said the servant girl, and she left to do her task. "A delicious meal I will make of the child," laughed Baba Yaga. The servant came into the room where Natasha was weaving to fetch the jug to take water to the bathhouse. Natasha said to her, "I beg you please be slow in making the fire and heating up the water. I need time to think of a plan." The servant girl said nothing, but she took a very long time in getting the bath water ready. Baba Yaga came to the window and said in her sweetest voice, "Are you still weaving, little niece? Are you weaving, my pretty?" "Yes, I'm weaving, Auntie," said Natasha. She thought, "I've got to get out of here, somehow." In a corner of the hut, Natasha noticed a thin black cat watching a mouse hole. "What are you doing?" she said to the black cat. "Watching for a mouse," said the thin black cat. "I haven't had any dinner in 3 days." "How lucky," said Natasha. "I have some cheese left," and she gave the cheese in her pocket to the thin black cat, who gobbled it up. The cat said, "Little girl, do you want to get out of here?" "Of course I do," said Natasha. "I fear that Baba Yaga will try to eat me with her iron teeth." "That is exactly what she will do," said the black cat. "But I know how to help you," whispered the cat. "Do you see the comb on the stool? Do you see the towel?" Natasha nodded. "You must take both of those," said the cat, "then run for it while Baba Yaga is still in the bathhouse. She will chase after you, and when she does, you must throw the towel behind you. It will turn into a big wide river, and it will take her time to cross the river. When she crosses over, throw the comb behind you. It will sprout up into such a thick forest that she will never be able to get through." "But if I leave the loom now to pick up the towel and the comb," said Natasha, "she will hear that I have stopped weaving, and then she will be able to catch me before I even have a chance to escape." "Don't worry," said the thin black cat. "I'll take care of that." Then he took Natasha's place at the loom. Clickety-clack, clickety-clack, the loom never stopped for a moment. Natasha looked to see that Baba Yaga was still in the bathhouse. She grabbed the towel and comb and quickly ran out of the hut. The big dog jumped up to tear her to pieces. But then he saw it was the same girl as before. "Why, this is the girl who gave me that bread and meat," said the dog. "Good luck, child," and he laid back down, letting her go. When Natasha came to the gate doors, they opened quietly without making any noise because of the oil she had poured into its hinges. Then, how did she run? Meanwhile, the thin black cat sat at the loom. Clickety-clack, clickety-clack went the loom. Baba Yaga came to the window. "Are you weaving, little niece?" she asked in a high-pitched voice. "Are you weaving, my pretty?" "I'm weaving, Auntie," said the thin black cat, while the loom went clickety-clack, clickety-clack. "That is not the voice of my dinner," said Baba Yaga. She ran into the hut. At the loom was no little girl, but only the thin black cat. "Grrr," said Baba Yaga. She jumped at the cat. "Why didn't you scratch out the little girl's eyes?" The thin black cat replied, "In all the years that I have served you, you have given me only water, and made me hunt for my dinner. The little girl gave me real cheese." "Grrr!" Baba Yaga grabbed the cat and shook it hard. Turning to the servant girl and gripping her tightly, she yelled, "Why did you take so long to prepare the bath?" "Ah," cried the servant, "in all the years that I have served you, you have never even given me a rag. But that girl gave me a pretty handkerchief." Baba Yaga cursed her and dashed into the yard. Seeing the gate doors wide open, she shrieked, "Gates, why didn't your doors squeak when she opened you?" "Ah," said the gates, "in all the years that we have served you, you never so much as sprinkled a drop of oil on us. We could hardly stand the sound of our own creaking. But the girl oiled us, and we can now swing back and forth without a sound." Baba Yaga slammed the gates closed. Spinning around, she pointed her long skinny finger at the dog. "You," she hollered. "Why didn't you tear her to pieces when she ran out of the house?" "Ah," said the dog, "in all the years that I have served you, you never threw me anything but an old bone. But the little girl gave me real meat and bread." Baba Yaga rushed about the yard, cursing and hitting, all the while screaming at the top of her voice. Then she jumped onto her broom and flew up into the air. Soon she was closing in on the little girl. "You will never escape me," Baba Yaga laughed a terrible laugh. "Ha ha ha!" She steering straight forward and downward toward the girl. Natasha was running faster than she had ever ran before in her life. She could hear Baba Yaga getting closer and closer. Then she remembered the thin black cat's words. She threw the towel behind her on the ground. It grew bigger and bigger and became wetter and wetter. Soon a deep, wide river stood between the little girl and Baba Yaga. Natasha kept running. Oh, how she ran! When Baba Yaga reached the edge of the river, she screamed louder than ever, for she knew she could not fly over the enchanted river. In a rage, she flew back to her hut. There she gathered all of her cows and drove them to the river. Drink, drink, she screamed at them. The cows drank up all the river to the very last drop. Baba Yaga hopped back onto her broom and flew over the dried up river to catch Natasha. Natasha had run on quite a distance ahead. In fact, she thought she might at least be free of the terrible Baba Yaga. But her heart froze in terror when she saw the dark figure in the sky speeding behind her again. "This is the end for me," she cried. It was so thick that not even Baba Yaga could force her way through it. Baba Yaga, screaming with rage and disappointment, finally turned around and flew away back to her hut. The tired girl arrived back home at last. "I'm home, but I cannot go inside," she said to herself, thinking of her stepmother. "What will I do?" She waited outside in the shed for her father to come home. When she saw her father pass by, she ran out to him. "Natasha, where have you been?" cried her father. "And why is your face so red?" The stepmother came out to see what the fuss was all about. She turned yellow when she saw the girl, and her eyes glowed green, showing her true self. But this time Natasha was not afraid. She told her father everything that had happened, and when the old man learned that his wife had sent his own daughter to be eaten by the witch Baba Yaga, he was so angry that he drove the stepmother out of the hut, never to return. From then on, the father took good care of his daughter, and he never let a stranger come between them. Once again, the table was piled high with honey bread, strawberry jam, and tea. Father and daughter played their games of peekaboo until it was time to go to bed, and so the two of them lived happily ever after. The end. I hope you enjoyed that story, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced anything. It's been a pretty tiring week for me. It's always a tiring week. It's hot here in Georgia. It is very hot, and I've been suffering from heat exhaustion this week at work. But I hope you enjoyed that story and the little bonus feature. And until next time, stay